Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for being here. I wanted to start this evening by saying that we do have a Spanish translator here this evening. So if you would like to introduce yourself. All right. The time is 5:57 p.m. and this meeting is hereby called to order. We have the presence of a quorum and the meeting has been duly called and notice of the meeting has been posted for the time and manner required by law. Please rise for the pledges of allegiance. Joining us here this evening is the Willow Ridge Marine Corps Junior ROTC. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Please remain standing for our silent invocation. You may be seated. Once again, I'd like to thank the Willow Ridge Marine Corps Junior ROTC. Let's give them a round of applause. Once again, thank you all for being here. We have a small room and we got a lot of people in here, but I appreciate everyone and we'll go ahead and get it started. Dr. Dupree, first up we have an information item, our Early Literacy Center Implementation and Special Education Early Intervention Update.
Yes, sir. We wanted to provide a mid-year update on some data on the successes of our new program this year at the Ridgemont Early Literacy Center and the Early Intervention Academy. And I'm going to turn it over to Deanna Saavedra, our Chief Academic Officer.
Thank you, Dr. Dupree, and good evening, President Burdine and members of the board. As Dr. Dupree indicated, this evening we're pleased to present you an update on the implementation of the Early Literacy Center and the Early Intervention Academy. We're going to be presenting some middle of the year data and also talking about future and next steps for expansion. One of the things that I want to call your attention to is that we believe in Fort Bend ISD that the most fundamental purpose of school is to teach students to read. They need to learn to read to be successful and to set them up for success with their education. Your visioning planning documents as a board, in them it is very evident the focus on literacy. We opened our meeting this evening with a focus on literacy, reading to our students, and as we inspire and equip our students for futures beyond what they can imagine, they need to learn to read at high proficiency levels so that they can then transition to reading to learn. So this evening, our presentation will focus on, number one, the program overview and what we do there in terms of instruction, staffing, and the enrollment. We'll talk about instructional supports that have been necessary to move students forward. We'll share some fall semester highlights, the BOY and the MOY data, which are the beginning of the year data and the middle of the year data in terms of reading and numeracy. We'll talk a little bit about the community outreach and expansion planning that we've done and next steps. So at this point, I want to turn it over to our presenters, our Executive Director, Stephanie Williams, our Principal or Instructional Officer at the Early Literacy Center, Venitra Senegal, and Dr. Hill, our Executive Director of Special Education.
So as we begin, I'll remind you that just under a year ago, we were here talking about the school redesign for the Early Literacy Center. That redesign project began with an instructional officer, Ms. Senegal, who would oversee the implementation of the balanced literacy instructional model across pre-K through first grades at the Early Literacy Center. In order to ensure strong professional learning and a job-embedded approach, we partnered with the Teaching and Learning Alliance, who works with Venitra to schedule new learning and ongoing job-embedded coaching to support the balanced literacy model. The ELC also houses our Early Intervention Academy for Special Education. And as you know, we launched the ELC using a phased approach where we had all pre-K in the Willow Ridge feeder pattern attend the ELC. And we had an opt-in for kindergarten students, and then we had the Ridgemont Elementary students in first grade. The final component of the school design of the Early Literacy Center that you'll be hearing about here tonight is the community engagement and partnerships. You'll be hearing a lot about how Venitra and her team have worked to engage parents in the community and in learning at the Early Literacy Center. But first, I want to review the staffing model at the center. In all classrooms have a 2-to-1, 2 educators in one classroom with 24 students approach. In pre-K, we have 1 certified teacher and 1 paraprofessional, while in kinder and first grade, we have 2 certified teachers with 24 students. That staffing model is essential to the success that you'll see here in the data. The other thing that I want to review is the enrollment. So if you notice here at the bottom, beginning with our Baker Ripley students from infant to age 3, then the Early Intervention Academy and full day pre-K, that represents students from across the Willow Ridge feeder pattern, and you can see here the corresponding enrollment for those students. Beginning in kindergarten, we have all of our Ridgemont Elementary kindergartners plus 13 opt-in students who are attending the ELC. And then we have all of the Ridgemont first graders for a total enrollment of 502 students at the time that we printed. Another huge foundational piece at the Early Literacy Center was a focus on building capacity for teachers and students. So we have instructional coaches in literacy and math that work in collaboration with Venitra and our external partner to support ongoing learning. With respect to students, we have interventionists for literacy, for mathematics, for speech, for ESL, and for PBIS, along with a PlayWorks coach to support a strong recess program and the action-based learning lab. At the Early Intervention Academy, we have a BCBA and an occupational therapist and a speech and language pathologist. But the most innovative approach in the master schedule deals with the outclass opportunities. In addition to the traditional outclasses offered at elementary schools, the ELC offers a STEM outclass to all students and arts integration theater class to all students. The addition of these 2 outclasses allows teachers to engage in an extended 90-minute professional learning time each week, so to either work on the use of student data to plan instruction, intervention, or enrichment, or to engage in new learning around the balanced literacy model. most important piece, that's all as we put it on paper to you last year, but what brings a plan like what we brought to you last year to life is the leadership team. And I'm really proud to sit with Venitra a semester in and allow her to tell you a little bit about the school and what they've been able to do there. She does have 2 other administrators on duty, an early literacy dean, I believe your dean is here, and an early intervention academy supervisor for the EIA. So at this time, I'll turn the presentation over to Venitra to tell you a little bit about the launch of school.
All right, good evening, all that are here. Just to give you a glimpse of my campus, or the campus that we have, my staff was very fortunate to be able to come together this summer early, starting the year, and develop in the summer and start to develop what our vision was for the campus. And so it wasn't a vision that I created, but rather a vision based on what the expectations are for us in growing our students. And so my staff came together and we came up with growing readers into leaders beyond what they can imagine, which aligns directly with Fort Bend ISD vision of growing our kids to where they need to be. With that, we recognize that there's some work that has to be done in order for that vision to happen. And so what we did was we discussed the how. How are we going to do that work? So we know that we will collaborate with the community to provide a safe, engaging, and supporting learning environment that fosters the well-being of all students, by building meaningful relationships with all our stakeholders, providing intensive data-driven interventions through a balanced literacy approach, and empowering our families and sparking community pride. Early on in the summer, when we were able to launch the campus, the 5 key areas of focus were hiring quality staff that has a heart for kids and a heart for growing. Comprehensive job-embedded professional learning plan was developed to ensure that staff members were learning what best practices of balanced literacy was about. With a partnership with the Teaching Learning Alliance Group, we were able to start that journey. Teachers engaged in learning prior to the start of the year. We focused on the foundations of the balanced literacy approach. The development of learning environments were created by both teachers, so that both teachers had ownership in the learning and the development of those classrooms. The job-embedded professional learning is continuing throughout our daily schedules. Our teachers are given 2 hours of PLC, or professional learning time, to grow in the area of balanced literacy, early numeracy, and all science and social studies as well. The teachers were very, very strategic in determining, we had to determine how we were going to partner teachers. So we looked at traits within teachers that were similar and those that would help them to be a marriage. Because when you put 2 teachers in a classroom, it has to be a marriage, because everything they do has to coincide for the best of our students. Teachers consistently and staff engaged in team building to establish high expectations and build relationships among staff and with our students. Finally, we launched a strong community engagement plan that began with a neighborhood walk at the very beginning of the year. Our team divided into 3 groups and went into the 4 areas within the Willow Ridge feeder pattern to welcome our parents and let them know we were here, and also to let them know about the upcoming monthly events at the Early Literacy Center, that whether they had a child there or not, that we wanted them to be a part of. We truly believe if the learning makes it to the table, then we've won, because our students are able to articulate their learning and understanding of what we're doing every day with them. From quality staff to professional learning to partnerships with the community, each aspect of the EOC seeks to leverage best practices to support the growth of our students. Just as Stephanie briefly discussed, a part of our instructional supports include, with the Early Intervention Academy, occupational therapy, music therapy, speech, and applied behavior analysis for our students. In the EOC program, we have PPCD, students that receive speech services. We have special ed in-class support, We have non-categorical early childhood students who are in our pre-K program that receive services. We have intensive literacy, early literacy interventionists, and early math interventionists. We have an EOD interventionist who work with our ESO students to build and grow vocabulary development. And we have a bilingual program. We utilize the balanced literacy approach as our path to teach early literacy development skills across all content areas. Students are learning through engaging read-alouds, shared reading and writing experiences, phonological development, phonics skills daily, independent reading, and one-on-one conferring, which our kids love the best because they get the teacher. Pre-K students learn through exploration, meaningful play, intensive small group instruction tailored to their needs. Okay. So this kind of gives you a snapshot of what our learning environment typically looks like at the Early Literacy Center. We start off with Community Circle every day, where we build quality relationships and get to know the ins and outs of our kids when they walk in the door. Our students are engaged in phonics lessons, math, small group instruction, and as I discussed, interactive writing opportunities, independent reading and conferencing, and engaging authentic math assignments. We really look to make sure the work and product that our students are doing is authentic. In the Early Intervention Academy, our students the primary focus starts with the social, emotional, and oral language skill development of students with autism and with intellectual disabilities. Students participate in activities or in the instructional day with their non-special ed peers. Our teachers also utilize components of the balanced literacy approach to grow our students with oral language development, phonological awareness, providing students with interactive reading and writing experiences, in addition to a focus on the early numeracy development as well. All of our students are provided music therapy to support the development of oral language, and they love it. And here's just a snapshot of some of our pictures from our students learning in action in the STEM class. And then you see the physical education and also where students are interacting with some Legos in STEM. One of our biggest initiatives, of course, is not only literacy and academics, but also the community outreach. We had record numbers at our very first goal-setting night meeting, where our parents were able to go into the classroom, see where their students were performing from the beginning of the year universal screeners, and then set goals around reading and math for their students. Those parents were then able to participate in authentic learning with the teachers teaching them how to play numeracy and early literacy games that they were able to take home and continue to work with their kids on to meet the goals. We will have 2 more meetings, in fact, one scheduled next week, to do our middle of the year celebration review and also set new goals for the end of the year. We also have Reading with My Teddy Bear, which was one of our biggest events as well. Our parents and students were able to bring their favorite teddy bear and book to read. It was amazing to see parents reading with and to their children. We also had Pink Out Day, where our students were able to recognize and honor those with breast cancer in honor of breast cancer awareness. Students participated in a Pink Out parade and were able to articulate the why they were wearing pink throughout the parade. My favorite storybook character parade was another huge hit at the center, where students were able to dress as their favorite storybook character. And if we didn't come dressed, the teachers were already prepared and ready for them, so whole classes were dressed as their class favorite character. And we also had a parade. We had our winter sing-along, where our pre-K through first grade students participated in speaking parts, songs, and dances in celebration of the winter holiday. And yes, pre-K students did oral presentations in front of all of our parents. In January, we hosted the Reading in My Jammies event, which is not up there, but was very important because it was where our parents were able to read with their child and receive a bag of age-appropriate books that were donated to the Early Literacy Center to take home. There were 98 parents who participated in this event, and additional books were sent home with students who were not able to attend. So our goal is to ensure that the books make it to the house, and that's what we've done.
So in your original board report, you received this slide that said that the comprehensive data summary would arrive today, and we're very excited to share that summary with you, beginning with our middle of the year pre-K circle screener data. What you have at the top, if you look, is the literacy circle data tied to phonological awareness. And if you'll notice at BOY, our monolingual students, we had 56% of our students on track for proficiency, and at bilingual, we had 3%. Recently, with the middle of the year screener, we have moved the monolingual students to 80% proficiency and the bilingual students to 79% proficiency, effectively closing the achievement gap. You'll notice the same trend in numeracy. You'll see that our monolingual students began in the BOY with an 80% proficiency around initial numeracy skills, with bilingual reporting in at 52%. And at MOY, we just rounded out the data with 91% with monolingual and 88% with bilingual. And what this data shows is that early intervention matters, that the sooner...
I'm sorry, I couldn't wait. I mean, that is just, yes, I just.
So continuing on, this slide shows the universal screener data for kinder and first, and I'd like to explain this first part. So beginning in kinder, students take the early literacy screener. That early literacy screener rates students' reading skills in early emergent, late emergent, transitional reader, and probable reader. With probable reader, this red being our goal by EOY in their kinder year. So by end of year as kindergartners, we want them to be probable readers. At any point in kinder or first grade, when a student reaches probable reader on the early literacy screener, they then transition to take the reading and math screener, and our target for all of our students is to take that screener in first grade. And that's really important as you look at this data. So this year, our kindergarten monolingual students at BOY, we had 0% of our kids at probable reader. And right now, we have 10% of our kids at middle of the year with probable reader. If you look at our bilingual students, we went from 4% to 66% at the middle of the year for probable reader. And then in first grade, you see we went from 0% to 26% for the middle of the year probable readers. And in first grade bilingual, 12% to 29%. So that's kind of the transition and the growth that we're seeing in kinder and first grade related to probable reader. But there's another piece of data here. Well, let me show you this. In first grade, you see this 26%. We also note that 15 of the first graders at the ELC have already transitioned to the reading screener. So that's good. They should be transitioning on to that reading screener. But this data is what is most important, I believe, for us to look at as a district. So the student growth percentile is a percentile that tells us the rate at which our students are growing compared to the students who take the test nationally. And what the REN 360 experts tell us is that if the SGP is between 35 and 65, we can count on about a year's growth for students. And what you see here is that in kindergarten, we have a growth rate percentile of 65%, and in first grade, 55%. Now, when I look at that early literacy growth across Fort Bend ISD, there are only 5 elementary schools that have an SGP of 60% or greater, and the ELC is one of them. That's at MOY, yes, middle of the year. So then last year, when we brought the idea of the Early Literacy Center to you, we brought the left-hand side of this chart. We were letting you know that in the district, at the middle of the year, 16% of our kids are at probable reader in kindergarten. And in first grade, 65% of our kids were at probable reader in first grade. Then we looked at the feeder pattern data in Willow Ridge, and you may recall this is 0 here. That was quite bothersome at the middle of the year. And so I want to show you this data compared to where we are now. So as a district, we're at 13% here. You can see in the feeder pattern, 3% probable readers at MOY, and the ELC is at 10%. So you can see beginning to close that gap there. This 42%, this is a good thing that this has gone down, because what that tells us is that more first graders have transitioned to the reading screener, which they should transition to the reading screener. So we want to see this number go down and the number of students taking this test go up. At the ELC, or in the feeder pattern, we have 10% of the students at probable reader and then 26%. So you can see that the ELC is beginning to close gaps for students, and we're beginning to see a rise in the data for probable readers there.
Okay, I'm going to just talk a little bit about the progress we're seeing with students served at the Early Intervention Academy. So if you remember, we have classrooms with students with disabilities and without. So I'm talking about approximately 27 students here. And so you can see we have 3 areas that we're going to talk about: self-care, literacy skills, and math skills. So I'm really excited to report, and this may not be a big deal to you guys, but we have 5 students that are potty trained, or toilet trained, I guess I should say, which is a huge deal for their parents. And so, you know, I know that, as you can imagine, some of the work that we do every single day when we're talking about toilet training, it's something that we have to do, you know, a lot of repetition, and so we're really proud of that. When we look at literacy skills, our children come to us, just like non-disabled students, they come to us in a variety of ways. And so right now we're excited. We have 48 students who know at least 7 or more of their lowercase letters. 57% know 7 or more of their uppercase letters. And, you know, that's important as we look at those prerequisite skills to building literacy. In our math skills, we have 39% of our students can count rote, at least up to 10 and more. 61% have that one-on-one correspondence. 65% can identify at least 5 numbers or more. And then you see some other data there for sorting, and sorting by color, shape, and size. So, you know, just if you recall, the main goal of serving our students in the Early Intervention Academy is to have them ready to fully transition into kindergarten in an inclusive kindergarten environment. And so these skills, as well as the skills here on the next slide, are prerequisites or ready-to-learn skills that we know that they need to be successful in kindergarten. These are all 3-year-olds. Some of them have turned 4, you know, but they started off at 3. Many of them turned 3 and started like maybe at 3 in October, or, you know, so it's all throughout the year we took in students. On this side, we look at more of those skills that, you know, cooperation, how they're responding to requests, and things like that. And you can see all 5 areas, we have some significant growth. So, you know, overall, with the students served in the Early Intervention Academy, we have lots of data that we can report out if needed. But, you know, we're just excited that we're seeing growth, and we're hearing positive feedback from our parents for our students served there. So this next piece, I'm talking about expansion planning, and this is for the ELC, the whole ELC. And so just to start with, when we think about our community engagement, we started back in December and gathered at the ELC with community members. Some of our initial feedback favored a slow transition as we talk about how the ELC will expand. However, as we met again in January, and you know, we're continuing to hear additional information from our family members, we have plans, I think this week, or this upcoming week or the next week, to meet with all of our pre-K students at the ELC and talk to their families to determine if they want to return for kindergarten at the ELC. And then we'll be hosting a meeting at the feeder patterns to reach out to those family members who have students who are not enrolled in pre-K in Fort Bend, but may be enrolled in some kind of daycare or other pre-K private program, to engage them and to learn more about their interest in the ELC. In February, we'll meet again with the broader community, and we'll share the MOY data that you saw tonight. And then in March, we will update the board with an expansion plan. One of the things that when we do our pre-K and our kindergarten enrollment, which is in April, we'll have some additional information. As those students for pre-K, when the parents enroll their students in pre-K, they will be enrolling their students for pre-K, K, and 1 at the ELC, and that will be the message. During that kindergarten registration, we will also learn more about our kindergarten students because, if the majority of our students, or if all of our kids that are in pre-K at ELC go on to kindergarten, we have some students out there we know that are not in pre-K now that we'll need to learn, that will be going into kinder, and we'll need to learn more about whether they want to opt in to the ELC or if they will go to their home school. And so I think we'll have more information there. And as far as our facility capacity, thank you. So we plan for next year for 1920. With the plans that we have, we will be at 110% at the capacity for that facility, so that we believe that the plans we've made will be able to serve the kids that we have coming in. Okay, and so our next steps, we'll continue to engage the community in a variety of ways, that we will continue to internally work with our ELC expansion team to bring feedback and develop plans as we continue to expand, and then again provide a report to the board in March. So questions at this time?
Wow, thank you. This is incredible. It's a big win for Fort Bend ISD. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up to our board members with any questions or comments. Mrs. Tausan?
Thank you. So I literally started tearing up when I saw that data, because that is exactly what we wanted to see happening, is closing the achievement gap for these kids. So I want to start by just applauding you in particular, and your team, and everybody who worked so hard to put this together, because it truly is making a difference. As a mom whose children went to an early intervention center, which had to be private because we didn't have anything like this, I know what it means to have those kids potty trained, because it takes a long time to have a kid with an intellectual disability potty trained. So that's a big deal at 3 and 4 years old. That data you shared is a big deal, because I remember where Abby was at that time. And so those are huge. Those are huge gains. So the first thing I want to say is congratulations on all the work that you've put in this year, and don't stop, because I really want to see more and more, and I know the rest of the board members do as well. So I do have a couple of questions. So we've talked in the boardroom before about the urgency that we feel for kids who are falling behind, and I think this work is excellent, and I think we knew it was going to make a difference. So what are we doing for our kids who are not? I'll be interested to hear the expansion plans, but we talked a lot too about how we're going to be helping our other kiddos who are not opting in, not at the ELC, but are at kinder or first or second grade, or even third and fourth and fifth grade at their home campuses. Do we have plans for that, or how are we supporting those kids? And I don't know who that question should be directed at, maybe Deanna.
Well, as Stephanie indicated, in terms of the professional learning, we are really focused on the balanced literacy piece, and a number of our campuses in that feeder pattern are involved in that as well. I know that at Ridgemont Elementary, Stephanie Houston has really worked with the Teaching and Learning Alliance, and they're seeing some gains at their campus as well in terms of they're adhering to the fidelity of the model, and so it's strengthening their Tier 1 instruction. So we see that there, and we're working with the other campuses as well with the balanced literacy piece. I know that we're in conversations to determine What are the aspects of some of these staffing configurations that we might need to think about? Even as we expand the ELC, what might that look like in second grade and in third grade when we know that those two grades, I mean, by third grade, we've got to have closed the gap as much as we can. So we're looking at that as we move forward to 1920 in terms of recruitment and staffing.
So that was going to be my next question, because I think we all know that we can have the best model in the world, and if we don't have the staff to support it, that we're not going to be successful. And the co-teach model works, but it is an expensive model to implement. So that was going to be my next question is, are we going to be able to support that with staff at our other schools, or at least to a certain degree, the way that we're supporting it at the ELC?
Right now, we're looking at a number of different costs so that we can see what could we work through so that as we move through the expansion and the cohorts move up, how are we costing that out so that by the time that they get to second grade into third grade, those supports are in place? So we're working through that as we speak.
I know that's tough, but I also know it's critical. So transitioning, while we're talking about staff, how are we supporting our teachers so that they don't get burned out? Because we all know what it takes to provide these kinds of interventions. And it's tough. It's tough to do with kids who are high needs within our early intervention center as well as our early literacy center. So how are we supporting our teachers so that we prevent as much as we can burnout?
So our campus, we have a lot of fun in learning. And so what we do is we do a lot of team building within the teams. We do a lot of fun games, just, Fat Fridays, anything that makes their load lighter. We will step in and support in the classrooms if we need to support. So I think just being a visible presence in those classrooms when they're needed is a big part of it. And then also ensuring that the culture is positive. One thing that I've noticed about my campus at the very beginning of the year, everyone was all smiles, and my goal is to keep that smile going. So giving constant feedback to our teachers weekly and our staff members weekly, letting them know, and doing shine awards about the things that they're doing. They're shining bright in the classroom. Not only do we do it at the administrative level, but we also do it within the team. So now teammates are giving each other shine awards for small things they're seeing done in the classroom. We constantly talk about shining bright and constantly shining bright for our kids. And because of the heart of the teachers and staff members at my school, they work very hard to continue to shine bright.
Well, I know they do. I mean, I've saw that when I visited, and you have an incredible staff there, and that it's evident in the classroom. So I just want to make sure that we're thinking about if they need relief or downtime. I mean, the PBIS is good, and having those behavioral support people there, and I know one of them. She taught my daughter when she was 3, so she's excellent. But we're always going to have those kids with those behaviors, particularly kids with disabilities. You're always going to be dealing with those behaviors, kids who struggle, and it's it can be hard on staff when they have to deal with that day in and day out. So I just want to make sure that we're thinking through how to provide that relief and support when they just need, when they're just like, okay, I've had pretty much all I can take for today.
Yeah, and our teachers also do they will take kids, they mentor kids. So if a kid is having a moment in their classroom, they will go into it from pre-K to kindergarten, from kindergarten to first, from first back down to kinder, just to give that opportunity, one, for the teachers to continue to teach, but also continue to allow that student who needs a different environment for that moment, an opportunity to learn in a different environment. So we do kind of have the teachers mentoring those babies that we have that are our Tier 3 babies as it relates to behavior supports. So we do that as well, so they're not always seeing us or the PBIS or intervention supports, but we do have several levels of intervention supports for our students that are at Tier 3 with behavior concerns.
Well, hopefully, too, as we implement trauma-informed care, that we'll be able to get more counselors and that type of support for you guys as well as our other campuses. That's really more ideal when you're dealing with kids with a lot of behaviors. It's usually around some kind of trauma. So,
And we do have conscious discipline that we're using, and we're training our staff on now. They've been trained on part 1, so it's like a 3-part series that we're training staff on, and we're going to continue that actually this Friday.
Oh, okay, good. Are you guys seeing a lot, I saw your parent engagement piece. Are you seeing a lot of parents engaged and supportive and that type of thing with the students who are in the programs?
Yes, our parent engagement numbers are really high. We
yeah.
try to do a great job of communicating out to parents what's coming up so that they can be a part of that learning. We tell our parents we want them in the classrooms. We want them reading to our kids for real. We want them in there doing the read-alouds with our kids. And so our parents are beginning to warm up and understand, and they love the culture. They love the environment. The feedback that I've gotten from several parents in the parent survey is that they really do feel a part of the community, and that is our goal, is to get more parents to be a part of that community. But yes, the numbers average between 120 to 230 parents that will show up at any given event, and it's because of the communication we put out there for them.
That is good. That's an important piece of it. So I just want to close with giving you guys a few more kudos on some things you're doing. So the theater and public presentation piece, I think, is critical. And that is part of the RISE model. From the time the kids are babies, they're put in front of the crowd. They're part of theater productions and that kind of thing. And that's huge for all kids, I think, but particularly kids with disabilities, because it does a lot to break down those social barriers that can be there. So I just wanted to give you kudos for that. And also, of course, music therapy. I mean, that was the piece that I really asked about in the beginning and wanted to make sure that we had kids that are nonverbal will sing before they speak, and it's huge for speech development, as we all know. So I want to put another plug in for it. I would love to see music therapy expanded to other campuses. Our pre-K and kinder, especially at our campuses that have struggling kids, because it helps with cognitive development, it helps with reading skills, it helps, I mean, I don't need to list it all, you guys know it, but I watched it work with my own child and a whole lot of others that were at the RISE school, so I just wanted to give a shout out to you guys for doing that, because I think it's a big part of the success of what you're doing. So thank you.
All right. Thank you once again. It was wonderful news, and I look forward to the next steps, as I know all of us do. And thank you for all your very hard work. Appreciate you. Next is our second quarter financial report for 2018-19. Dr. Dupree.
All right, I'll let Steve kind of give a high-level overview and then kind of interact with the board on any questions or feedback you may have.
Thank you, Dr. Dupree. Members of the board, so our second quarter financial report was included in the packet. Some of the highlights I'll go over here in a minute, but also know that we are going to be giving you a budget and legislative update next week in terms of where we expect things to happen. But this report is on the how the last 6 months have gone. So we do have some good news on the revenue side. We've spoken about some of it already, with property tax revenues being higher and some additional state funding from a prior audit. Through December, our general fund has loaned the bond funds $12.8 million for the bond program. So that'll be paid back whenever we have our next transaction. The general fund paid out almost $1.6 million for Harvey expenses. We received some insurance revenue of about $800,000. Have a gap there. We've submitted everything to FEMA except for Juan Seguin Elementary. We haven't done that yet because we're still waiting to pay off on the retainage for that. So hopefully that'll happen soon. So FEMA has approved and paid 26 out of 77 projects, and so with another 11 near finalization. So we're still working through that. It's a long process. The general fund's expected to, we have a lot of good news on the revenue side. We are expecting more expenses on the general fund side, and we'll have a lot more detail for that next week, but I'll tell you what some of the big rocks are. That's $15 million. So I mentioned the 1.5 for Harvey. The December staffing, which was approved last time, is about $3.5 million. That's not in the budget yet. It's part of the amendment. TRS, truing up TRS is about $3.5 million, but there's offsetting revenue for that. Then some of the others, maintenance supplies, $2 million, and then also building repairs, $3 million. So there's more being spent on Function 51, and hopefully that'll be able to subside once we start being able to get some of the investments in from a bond perspective. The health fund through December has a deficit balance of $600,000. We're hoping that 2019 is going to be a better year from the health fund perspective, and we had a lot of shift of our enrollment into some of the plans that we anticipate saving money from, but there's going to still be a tail from all of the elective stuff done in December that we're paying out on, because January wasn't a good month for us. And so hopefully we'll be able to have some better information in 3 months on that. The print shop has a small deficit balance, but that's an internal service fund, but we're increasing the rates effective January 1st. We think we'll be able to take care of that. Like I said, we're going to be going through our forecast with the legislative update next week, but I'll be happy to take some questions if you have any.
Mr. Rice?
Thank you, Mr. Burdine. Mr. Bassett, have you had any preliminary discussions with the CAT appraisal district yet on the revenue growth of our appraised value?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We had one, and we're thinking that it's going to be 4%.
4%.
Yeah, that's where we met with Glenn a couple weeks ago and his team, and so that's what we're thinking. We'll see. There's a lot of new development, like over 2,600 new homes, on their rolls. But that's what we're calculating out with the information we got from them. That's what we're projecting right now.
Mm-hmm. And let me ask you a question. When we're opening new schools and we've got to incur the startup costs, we've got to hire the teachers for the schools and everything else,
Mm-hmm.
Are we getting funding for that in arrears from the state?
Well, the state has the NIFA, the New Instructional Facilities Allotment, okay? And in the current biennium, it was originally allotted for every ADA that you had in the new schools to get $1,000. Well, they didn't fund that completely, so we are getting about $250 or something along those lines, for those kiddos, and that helps, okay? But one of the things that they are including in the School Finance Commission is to have it fully funding the $1,000 per ADA for new instructional facilities. So that'll help with our future schools, hopefully.
Okay. Well, I'll wait until next week.
Yeah, you'll
right.
be very interested in a lot of stuff we'll talk about next week.
Thank you.
I just had one quick question. So the health insurance fund, I know in the past that we put out some information to get our employees to understand what it is that we're doing when we self-insure.
Mm-hmm.
Have we seen any success with any of those materials, or?
Yes and no. I mean, we continue to put stuff out. Remember, we have a fair amount of turnover, each year, so it's an ongoing challenge, to get that message out on a regular basis. And so we're always working on that. We have benefit coordinators that visit sites on a regular basis, split up amongst 4 people. And so they go out and meet with folks. So we do think that overall the employees are better informed than they were a while back.
Right.
But we're always battling health insurance medical cost inflation.
That's good. So we are still working on educating, and
Most definitely.
that's part of our routine.
Yeah, we're still meeting monthly with the benefits committee members, and we challenge them. We give them information to also be an ambassador for us on the campuses.
Great. Thank you very much. We look forward to next week. Excuse me. Looks like we will now convene in closed session under the Texas Open Meetings Act, Chapter 551, and those sections listed in the agenda, and for the purpose of private consultation with the board's attorney on any or all subject matters authorized by law. We are now convened in closed session.